afternoon to everybody. My name is Marc Aureli Santos. I'm working now as a Director of Urban Architecture and Heritage at the Municipality of Barcelona. One of the jobs we must start now is the revision of the urban catalogue of the heritage of the city. That is a hard job, and we thought that maybe it could be interesting to make some kind of previous reflections about the thing and talking about what heritage means today in the society of the new millennium. Because of that, I asked with Alessandro Scarnato, who is going to be with us later discussing, and he made a very interesting series of roundtables with different experts of the city to talk about what heritage means today and what we must talk about this, what represent this in our society. Then we asked with Gemma Serch, who is going to be with us too, to study what's happening around the world in this concept, and she made a very interesting document talking what's happening around the world. And for example, she discovered in the very different societies the concept of heritage is a part of the concept of environment, what I think is very important to the discussion of today, because everything is both of the things are related. Then we asked with Cia González Virós, who is a very known expert of processes of participation, and she proposed us to make a special course at the Escola Serch in the Architectural Association up to this to make a methodological process to think with the different entities of the society about how we construct together the concept of heritage nowadays. Then we decided to participate with an interesting project of the University of Barcelona of the Department of Archaeology, talking about a project called Paleobarkino, who is trying to discover how was the landscape of the city before the human settlement. This is very interesting because the theory, which is a theory that, for example, in New York City they are making something similar, is a urban landscape is only a part of the history of landscape. I think that this theory is very interesting. And then we are working together with the urban landscape, the department of the city, in a very interesting project called Auscultacions de Paisatges, urban landscape auscultations. They're trying to discover in every neighborhood of the city where the special things who describe who the people understand that they are the quality of life of this part of the cities. The idea is to understand the complexity of the city and to understand too where are the opportunities and where are the weaknesses of every neighborhood. With all of this background, I had a meeting drinking a cup of coffee with Eva Prats, who is going to be today the conductor of the session. Eva Prats, I have been working with her because she has a very interesting studio with Ricardo Flores together, and they together made a special issue for the IQD magazine talking about second-hand concept. I understand that this concept could be very interesting for us because it's a part of the reflection of how we must start to work in the transformation of the city. I told this to Laia Grau, who is my boss and who is going to be also with us later. And we decided that to start to work with the concept of the second hand or the second chance to the things is a very nice way of start to plan the future of the city nowadays. Well, nothing else. We are going to meet with Eva Prats now. Thank you, Eva, for everything, and see you later.
Thank you, Marc, Aureli, for inviting me to organize this session. I'm very pleased to be with all of you, audience and guests, and I'm sure we're going to have a great afternoon together. The title of this session, Second Hand, is the same title we used with my partner Ricardo Flores when we created last year one of the issues of the Italian magazine IQD. Today, we are fortunate to have with us 4 of the participants whose work was included in that issue. We gave the name Second Hand to that issue of the magazine because it is an expression that refers to the second life of things, and therefore we could collect under this umbrella the work of several disciplines focused on the reuse of things and ideas: artists, designers, historians, filmmakers, playwrights, architects, musicians, creators whose work manipulates material that have already been used by others, but can still have another life. The guests that we have with us today work in the reuse of films, recipes, construction material, and waste. And they are going to talk about their projects from their own experience, from their creative world. Each of them gives a different value to the second-hand material that they manipulate in their projects. And they all manage to actualize this material with a new meaning. This session is appropriate now, in the precise moment when the city of Barcelona is reviewing its heritage plan, as in our opinion, it is crucial to incorporate the criteria of other disciplines in the debate that the revision of this plan opens, as this is a social, cultural, and political affair that concerns all of us. Let me please now explain you briefly the structure of this session that is organized in 3 phases. First, we will listen to the presentation of our guests, Miralda and Davide Rapp. In the second round, we will listen to the presentation of guests Lionel Devlieger and Curro Claret. And the third moment will be a debate between the 4 guests and 3 local architects that are at the moment involved in the revision of the heritage plan of Barcelona. They are Laia Grau, Gemma, Serch, and Alessandro, Scarnato. The public will be able to participate in the debate, sending their questions via YouTube, and we will incorporate the questions at the end of the debate. So let's start with the first guest. It's Antoni Miralda. Miralda, I introduce you briefly, is a multidisciplinary artist that has investigated the art of food for more than 4 decades, using a vibrant and inclusive language based on the celebration of all senses. Having experience with photography, video, sculpture, collages, objects, and monuments, his work is always rooted in its social context. Miranda has lived and practiced in different cities. He was in the 60s in Paris. In the early 70s, he moves to New York. And since then, he has lived between the States and Europe, creating public art and installations. Miranda has received numerous awards. Among them, I will just mention a recent one, the prestigious Velázquez Prize. In the mid-80s, Miralda, with Chef Montse Guillén, created in New York the acclaimed El Internacional, a tapas bar and restaurant. And this afternoon, we have the opportunity to listen to Miralda to talk about this project.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much, Eva, for introducing. And what a great team we have here. I just would like to try to introduce some part of this project of the restaurant El Internacional, the tapas bar and restaurant. Usually when we talk about this, about El Internacional, we talk about the place, I mean, the entrance, the flag entrance, the open kitchen, the 4 dining rooms, the video menu. I mean, but I would like to talk about a few details, like objects, like kind of a little bit haunted objects they were there, and they were also for me very important because they were very much part of this second-hand kind of metaphor and concept of for sure. So anyway, those pages, you saw the drawing, is a drawing on the left side and a photo on the right. Do you see it well?
Yes, I can see the asphalt.
Okay, perfect. So this is, I'm going to show some pages of a book. It's like an artist book, but more than artist book is an insurance book. It's a book that I did. I never showed it before, so I'm very nervous about that because nobody knew about that. That was like the haunted book, and it was not part of the publication we did about the International. And I'm sure Eva and Ricardo, you don't know about that. So this is like the insurance book. And I had a certain point, we had to insure the whole piece because we had to say, well, this has a value. I mean, it's not only a restaurant, it's a piece of art, whatever you see inside, outside, it has a value. So we put on I did this sort of a sketch artist book, and I put a price, a name, and a date, and a price to everything. Then it was on the restaurant. So this is the old Coke can mosaic. So the idea of creating a mosaic made of cans came out of my experience, my experience, the time that I was living in that area, and the fact that it was a very sort of gray concrete landscape, large streets. I'm talking about West Broadway, New York, Manhattan, 1980s when I arrived there. I arrived in the 70s, but whatever. It was all kind of flat jewels, flat shiny pieces incrustated in the concrete. And I thought that it was quite interesting because they were like fossils. So I was keeping those pieces, those cans, flat cans from different origins. Most of them were Coca-Cola, of course, because we're talking about a Coca-Cola country, 100%. So my idea of this, creating that terrace outside of the restaurant, it was to do those sort of perspective, fake perspective, and cover with those wonderful cans that I was finding around the area. The trucks were, still going on by that time. At the end of the restaurant in 1986, were no more trucks. And now you ask to anyone in Tribeca, what is a truck then? They never saw one truck. It's like the whole place had changed. So anyway, let me show you some of those, what I call the jewelry. So by that time, actually, my idea was to do it all with Coca-Cola, to do like a Coca-Cola mosaic. But I couldn't do it because this was the time that Coca-Cola had the bad idea of creating the classic Coca-Cola. And the classic was like a brand. This happened exactly at the end of the 84, when I would start to do the terrace. The restaurant opens in September, and 2-3 months after, we did step by step, we did the terrace. So anyway, I was trying to catch all those Coca-Cola cans flat around the area, but there was no more because the change of the Coca-Cola to Coca-Cola Classic was a little more sweet. So many people hated, and was many protests, was nearly a mob in the street. So people don't want more the Coca-Cola Classic, whatever. So I had to share with some other cans and some other sodas. They're all beautiful, so that was okay for me. Let me show you a few ones. So of course, each one has a flavor, has a logo, has a message, has a color, has a colonial connection, whatever. The classical club soda. So let's move on another object, still outside, close to the mosaic tiles. I miss the tile cans, the can tiles. And this is a, how you call it, a kidney. The kidney table that I found in the second floor of the building when we came in. So actually the piece is called Teddy's Kidney Light Table, because the table was transformed as a light table. I changed I used the frame, I keep the frame of the kidney shape, and I did a new base material, and what I incrustated, I mean, I collaged different pictures. Then there has to do about, the people who were in the restaurant before us. So when was Teddy's? So here we have some beauty from the 50s and 60s dinners. We have a Liz Taylor with two husbands. One here, that's Eddie Fisher, of course, and Richard Burton. We have another one, of course, Jane Fonda, wonderful, next to Capuchin. Oh yes, this is the comedian who had the Tonight Show, Carson, excuse me. Sophia Loren, whatever, Kirk Douglas, and whatever. So the idea was to have those sort of historical steps together, like this kind of memories all together in this kidney that the people could step on. So you see somebody who's coming in. So this was just a kind of entrance, and of course was lit. It has a light behind on the night. So it was quite interesting. And every photograph, every document that I found in the archives, I'll tell you another time, this is a long history, I find on the archive of the owner and some other places. So every photo was signed by, was a fake sign, because I did myself the signs, of course, but by all the VIPs, all the big ones. He's doing some exercise on Eddie Fisher and Liz Taylor, whatever. So let's just move on the next picture. And this is more than an object. I mean, it was a big object, if I can say it. It's like I work on the facade. The facade from the 50s, we have it on the left side. There's 5 windows. The classic 50s sign, the Teddy sign, with neon behind. It was wonderful. The canopy, the windows. So when we got the restaurant with Monse Guillen, my partner, so it was already, the whole thing was covered. The whole wonderful facade was covered with, you don't see too much here, with sort of fake 70s. This was the very earlier, later 70s, earlier 80s, with sort of fake stone. And you don't see all the windows, whatever, everything was flat, was a kind of camouflage. So what I did is I sort of got to this, the pattern of these stones, of these fake stones. You don't see too much here, the pattern. And I blow up it, and we did the negative. So, and sort of camouflage the whole facade on this black and white pattern, kind of camouflating the whole facade. Okay, so of course also the sign, keeping the apostrophe that was becoming after kind of the main connection of the whole, of the whole Dalmatian image that we gave with this facade. Let's go inside. This is in the first floor, the sentimental room, called also Teddy's sentimental room, because here we had many, many documents, all those documents that I told you we found as a vitrine, as a display. as videos, sound, and editing sound. And actually, I want to talk about the tete-a-tete table, who, April 85, it has a value of 20,000. We never sold that, but I mean, this for the insurance, that was very important, whatever. So this table was a kind of long table, and the tete-a-tete was created. I think it's very difficult to see it in the photo. There is one head here, it's a toreador head, bullfighter head, and there's another one here. We'll see in the next picture. And also it's a fountain. It's a fountain of wine. On top is a porron. I guess everyone knows a porron, I imagine. If not, you should. Absolutely. And objects, as I said, on Sentimental Museum were there. The lamps were switched on in that way, the size, to create that kind of sense of moving or rotating. And this was the cosmos, the Mappa Mundi, made of mirrors, like a disco ball that was turning all the time, creating a kind of memory sickness, seasickness kind of effect. And if we move on, these are the bullfighters. Yeah, I mean the lights. Just I recycle some decorative statues, and I find in a flea market, whatever, and it was transformed. But I was studying a little bit if it's not going to be, if I should really keep as a bullfighter, or I should change the head. So you see on the left side some sketches, because first I thought perhaps should be a Guardia Civil. You see the unicorn, the head here. I don't know if you're familiar with that kind of a Spanish icon, a symbolic icon. I mean, those pieces are all part of this, I think, this concept of secondhand, of finding a piece, transforming, getting some input, changing, and at the very end, you're totally surprised, of course, because you get a completely another message. This is exactly what I'm saying. This is it's called the Restrooms Hand Dryer Monument. And it's the hand dryer that I found in the original bathrooms. I mean, I think probably if you read this incredible article at your magazine, you'll see the bathrooms were quite places where people stayed a long time, there was sound, there were kind of atmosphere, it was like chill out bathrooms, if I can say. So anyway, that was the kind of little piece, and I found it, and I connected to this idea of a monument with a large screen changing images, the top smelling fresh flowers, the sound coming from both sizes, plus the sound of the hand dryer, the automatic hand dryer. And of course, this kind of, I don't know, cenotaph, more funerary or movie or parking kind of movie house or whatever, a kind of creation from this idea. Let's move on to the next one. Again, those were the lamps, the objects were the lamps, then were part of the second floor of the restaurant. In fact, there were two pieces put together. One was enlarged and the crab hands, and the other one I found it also sitting in some place in the same, in the Teddy's, in the restaurant, the old restaurant. I call first we call the crab lamps, and after the final name of the piece is the Lobster Dream. And it has, the photo is not very good. Sorry, I mean, this is very much a scratch artist work. It's not for be published. But I'm happy to share all these secrets with you all. So you see on the photocopy how the drawing of the room and the different lamps. And it was interesting because it was a kind of a sort of way those arms, those lobster fingers come, you know, like utensils, and they were sort of way animated, if I can say, depending also on the light and also how, you know, how much you've been involved in the Porron and Olympics, and, you know, on the Margarita Blue, who was our special drink at the bar. So, you know, everything helps, of course, in a restaurant. Restaurant is, you know, it's like a sandwich with many layers. You know, you get the atmosphere, the feeling, the people for sure, the food's coming, you know, the newspaper you read, the menu, the information you get from the menu, you know, the feedback, you know, the talk, the dialogue with the other ones, the tour of the restaurants, the objects, you know, it's like a kind of many. It's not just now we just watching these objects completely out of the context. It's a little difficult to imagine. But I mean, I guess, you know, you should read the section second hand of the magazine, and you'll see many good things over there, and a lot of information. Let's see, there is a box, then, a vitrine that was for me quite important, because from there was coming the wine. So we sort of keep here symbolically, because actually the white is not ice, it's just salt. We had like keep it in the salt to keep it forever, you know, like a dried salted wine bar. The bottles had to do all about, you can see on the photos, but, you know, a little bit of imagination, please. All the levels, they're all religious. So I keep here, I'm very also interested about popular iconography coming from these religions icons. So there's a lot of wines, especially German wines, and many other places with names and labels with saints and saints and holiness, whatever. So we had this kind of a little bit magic vitrine. The boom, the radio was all covered with shells, the magic shells, the one that you use in Santeria, and you use for good luck and then the different religious ceremonies. On top was one of these great silhouette, Ogun. This is a god, but this is Haiti, from Haiti, so this is more voodoo, but it comes also connected to the Santeria. And I'm not sure about if I have a picture of what is on top, but let me explain you a little bit. It's a coffee espresso machine, and it was all sort of converted, like also kind of another monument. So it was more like a crematorium, you know. On top was this wall, the atlas, totally black, and on top was an eagle, and here we have this, you know, the Italian classical machine. So it was kind of a monumental recycle, and certain point like a crown of that place too was. And actually, I didn't tell you about the title, of course. I'm sorry about that. Yes, that's very important. Yeah, The Temptation of St. Anthony. So again, you know, there's some references. I don't know, you know, how much we want to get to these references, you know, or how close. But yes, you know, I'm sure he was very, very, I mean, he had a sense of eating and drinking St. Anthony, I'm sure. And of course, being there, surrounded by the smells, by the hundreds of tapas going up and down the floors, by those wines with all these signs. So this was kind of a working idea for this illuminating, with the antenne, we illuminating, you know, the St. Anthony's temptations. And of course, please, the Perron. Never forget about the Perron, never, please. So let's see if there's anything else here. I think so. Oh, it doesn't look, Well, but I'm strange because I'm missing something. Anyway, let me go through. Oh, yes, of course, a crown, yes. Well, yes, the crown was quite amazing for me to get to this message, you know. By that time, I was working very involved already with a project called Honeymoon. The Honeymoon was a sort of a imaginary love affair between two monuments, a monument representing the freedom, the Statue of Liberty in New York, in the harbor in New York, another one representing or symbolizing the conquest, and this one set in Barcelona harbor. So when I find out there was a love affair between them, etc., etc. So I'm not getting to that project because I don't think it's too much in the second hand. It's more third hand, fourth hand. And so let's getting to the idea of the crown. By that time, when we built an International, 3 months of the summer 1984, in West Broadway and Lower Manhattan, the Statue of Liberty started to be covered because they were preparing the big celebrations of the 200 years, and it was like the centennial, the double centennial, whatever. I mean, it was like a big deal. So anyway, people couldn't see more the Statue of Liberty. It was totally covered on the, a kind of ghosty structure in the harbor. So anyway, I thought that would be a good idea, since we had this wonderful flat roof, and then to build a crown, an exactly size crown on top of the restaurant. So I started to work on the crown. All this to tell you, then I was very kind of excited and stimulated, and I don't know if I can say obsessed by the spikes, the pikes of the crown, and this kind of waiting for you. You don't know what. I mean, kind of violence, but at the same time, it's like a sign, a hand. I mean, some whatever. It has some probably many interpretations. So I start to build with this idea a model, like a maquette of the brochette, the Liberty Crown brochette. And you cannot see very well in this picture. So this is the outside window of l'International. We had two windows. One window was totally open to participation. It's changing every 3-4 months, different artists. And that one was more like a static. It was like the home window that said, here we had peace, and then they stay there a few months. So anyway, it was like why we don't do this kind of brochette? I mean, why the crown should be, I mean, why Liberty should wear that crown, always the same. I mean, let's try to animate that. So this was my idea. So there's lights behind, but I don't know, the photo, the Polaroid, might tell you then all those are these old Polaroids. For this, the quality is so wonderful. You cannot see, but I did some other projects after that. This is like a recent, more recent drawing of those pikes turned as brochettes. The foods had to do about this exchange of food between New World, Old World. The old foods who came after Columbus, or starting Columbus. Columbus brought the potatoes and the red potatoes, the boniatos, the sweet potatoes. In the second trip, third trip, in the ananas, the maize, of course, the green peppers, or whatever. We're talking about dialogue, a change, about, how how the diets were transformed, how the diets of the world. So anyway, it was also many foods who came from the new to the world, but this was the idea, to have her crown, her diadem with those foods. And let me show you, just to finish, an interpretation that I did when we present l'Internacional, the project in Buenos Aires, in the Faena Art Center, a few years ago with Montse Guillén. And I had the idea to make finally that crown the right size, because the crown on top of the roof, it was not the brochette crown. I think I talked to the engineer, and they said, the wind and the weather and the security and the lights and the birds and whatever, not put food on top of the roof of a building. So anyway, this is a little bit first-hand more than second-hand kind of realization of this dream of the brochette crown, and that's it.
Great, thank you very much, Miranda, for the tour around the International. We'll have as a couple, as a duo this afternoon, Davide Rapp, Davide is an architect and video artist. He studied in the Politecnico di Milano and has a PhD from the same university. And Davide is founder and creative director of the creative agency based in Milano, Orama. He works across the field of architecture and cinema, producing mixed media installation, movie montages, and video essays. In 2014, he participated in the 14th Venice Biennale of Architecture, created by Rem Koolhaas, where Davide showed a 32 minutes long montage of short architectural clips, specifically conceived for this exhibition. Probably some of you will remember this hypnotic huge screen that was at the entrance of the International Pavilion in the Biennale. It was impossible to miss and to escape from its magic. And Davide was the author, and since then Davide has kept the collaboration with Rem Koolhaas. His movie montages and video essays have been exhibited and screened in many international movie festivals and biennales, and he has also been published in different international magazines such as Cahiers du Cinéma or Architectural Review. Davide is also involved in academics. He teaches regularly at Politecnico di Milano and University of Genova, and he has lectured in several universities in Italy and around. And Davide, we're looking forward.
Hi, hello everybody. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here with you, and I'd like to say thank you to Miralda because it was amazing, very interesting and funny, and can't wait to discuss about it later. So I will share my screen. As the title of this conversation is secondhand, I would like to show you 3 different works that I did in the past years. I would say since 2014, when I changed my professional life and I started working as a video maker and as a video artist. And so, well, if I have to think about something related with this idea of secondhand, according to the history of cinema, probably the most easy thing to say is to tell the story, to refer to the idea of the remakes. As you know, in the past 100 years, Hollywood, but also in abroad in other countries, all the people that work inside the world of the cinema, they always love to remake movies. As you see, remake is according to the American Heritage Dictionary, the definition says that remake is a verb. It means to make again or anew, and the act of remaking or doing something in remade form, especially a new version of an early movie or a song. So this idea, it's interesting to me. I love remakes. I have to say most of people hate remakes, but I have to say that I love them because for me, remaking movies gives the possibility to learn something about something that was done before by other directors, of course, but also gives the possibility to add something new. Sometimes this doesn't work, and everybody probably can list at least 2 or 3 or more bad remakes, but sometimes it works and it makes sense. So the first video, the first thing that I would like to show is related with this idea of remaking movies in order to produce something new, something that wasn't already in the original version. For example, Alfred Hitchcock in 1934 released this very well-known movie that was titled The Man Who Knew Too Much. At the time, he was directing his movies in the United Kingdom. And well, it was a good commercial success. But then when in the 50s, he went to Los Angeles and he started working as a director in Hollywood, he had the chance to remake it, to do a new version of this film. And in 1956, he released another version of the same movie that was titled The Man Who Knew Too Much as well. The story was more or less the same, while the location were different because the first one was in Switzerland, while the second one was in the UK as well. But what is interesting is that there is this the same director that wants to do the same movie twice. So in the past, I would say 3 or 4 years ago, I decided to study this idea of remaking movies and trying to compare different versions of the same story, different versions of the same film. In a 3 minutes long video that I'm going to show right now, you will see some samples of this idea. It will start with a comparison between 2 different movies made by the same director. It means the 2 different versions of the same film, that is Funny Games. And you will see that more or less the director decided to record it in the same way, after 10 years. And the only difference is that he changed the cast, he changed the main characters, the main actors, I will say. And so it's the same film, but it has a different meaning. I don't know, I can't say what is this meaning, what is the difference between the 2, but you will see that also in terms of interior design, interior space, the color of the image and the way the camera record the space is a little bit different. It looks similar, but it's different. Then you will see another funny remake, because in 1973, The Exorcist was released in the United States. It was a success worldwide. But 1 year later in Turkey, they didn't have the chance to project, to screen The Exorcist movie. And so they decided to remake it, to make their own version of this film. And you will see an interesting scene in which you can compare on one side, The Exorcist, The Exorcist speaking with the girl. On the other side, the same happening in the Turkish version. And you will see, for example, that in the original version, you have the cross, for example, the Bible, while in the second one, you have the Quran, and everything is related to Muslim and another religion. So it's interesting to see 2 different religions all together in order to fight the evil. While the third and last short video that you will see is related with Psycho. So we go back to Alfred Hitchcock. In 1960, Hitchcock released this very famous thriller. And in 1998, Gus Van Sant decided to remake it and to make it as it is, shot for shot. The only main difference is that the Gus Van Sant version is a full color version. And we will see that he tried to update a little bit the very famous Bates Motel, just adding some images and changing a few details. We don't know why he did it, but I think that the result is very interesting, but because it probably reveals that Gus Van Sant loved so much this movie that he wanted to study and to remake it as it is in order to understand it more and more. So I would like to play the first video that is called Seeing Double, if Mario can start it.
das immer Ihnen.
Instead urged compass and said emotions.
The museum.
Damage is mostly along the coast, the tide in some spots.
Er erreicht Windgeschwindigkeiten von 250 Stundenkilometern. Oft legt er eine Strecke von mehr als 10.000 Kilometern.
Ja, beim Anbremsen. Ohne Bremseinwirkung, beim Anbremsen passiert die Kontrolle über das Auto. Das übrigens ist ein ganz wunder Punkt nach der Spitzkehrung. Hier nämlich die zweite Geschichte sehr, sehr ruckelig.
That's all he can do. He does, Rick, and you had it figured earlier. I mean, it can happen, so he knows what he has to do. He sat on the pole here. He has to win here today, then go into Iowa and give it everything he's got there.
Bu sefer mutlaka kaybedeceksin.
Kes sesini alçak şeytan, düzenbaz, lanetli yaratık!
Bates?
So what we have watched, there were 3 short clips taken from a series of 12 different videos that I did trying to compare different movies. And I think that remaking, according to the history of cinema, is something that can fit with this idea of second-hand, of taking the material from someone else, from the past, and try to read it, understand it, and changing it, maybe adding a few things or completely changing it. Then I will try to speak about this found footage architecture title that was the title of the article that I wrote for the IQD magazine in collaboration with Eva and Riccardo. And well, found footage is, again, according to the history of cinema, a way to produce movies, to produce a video using footage that is already there, something that is already there. You only have to find something, a video that you can use, a film, something now that you can download from internet because some user have uploaded some scenes from his life and so on, and then try to put them all together with the editing process and produce something new. So According to Wikipedia, in filmmaking, found footage is the use of footage as a found object appropriated for use in collage films, documentary films, mockumentary films, and other works. Well, the first time that I understood that this idea of collage films was actually a possibility was when I had the chance to watch this film from the 60s. It was delivered in 1964, that was called Verifica Incerta. The director of this film were Baruchello and Griffi, and they delivered a half-an-hour-long film in 1964 in which they edited all together a lot of scenes taken from very bad film that they found somewhere. Those films were supposed to be destroyed, and they decided to maintain them, to cut them in a very interesting way and produce something new. In this film, that it's an half an hour long, as I said, and you can easily find it online if you want to check it. There is a scene that is very interesting, a 3 minutes long scene in which you can see a huge amount of doors and windows opening and closing with many different actors doing that. You can also see in this image that there is Gregory Peck opening one of those doors. Well, this scene was very interesting for me. It meant a lot. And then later I had the chance to, I would say, remake this in my very first project that was, as Eva said before, Elements, the video that I did for the Venice Biennale of Architecture. So in this definition, we speak about collage films, and collage is this artistic composition of materials and objects pasted over a surface, often with unifying lines and color, but as you can see, is also an assemblage of diverse elements. And Elements is the title of the film that I did for the Fundamentals Biennale curated by Rem Koolhaas in 2014 for the exhibition Elements of Architecture. This is the facade of the Central Pavilion in the Giardini in Venice. It's interesting because here you can read more or less the same way to work with a facade that we saw before, thanks to Miralda, in which you can add, for example, the title of an exhibition, Elements of Architecture, on the facade of an existing building without removing La Biennale, and then the layering of the two different texts makes sense and produce something. Well, I did this video for this exhibition. Maybe most of you or some of you had the chance to visit it in 2014. When I did this, actually, I had the chance to go to Rotterdam and meet the team that was working at the time on this exhibition. They showed me this huge model, and they said to me that in each of these 15 rooms, there will have been one different exhibition about one of the 15 elements of architecture. These elements, the fundamentals, it means those elements that for Rem Koolhaas, OMA, and the Harvard Graduate School of Design were the main important elements, the elements that every architect worldwide can use in order to produce new architecture. The idea of this exhibition was very interesting, I think, because it has this idea of a huge catalog of possibilities, and this gives the idea to the visitors, to the viewers of this exhibition, that you can only have to select the elements and put them all together if you want to do something new. Well, they asked me to do this video because at the time, in 2014, I had a huge amount of images collected in a period of 3 years. And this collection was published online on a blog that was called Fictitious Interiors. So I had a huge amount of images according to corridors. Later, this collection went to Facebook, and then I had a huge amount of images according to the topic of toilet, mirrors, floor, stairs, dining room, kitchens, elevator, museums, and so on. And so I had a huge amount of clips and images. And then the OMA found this archive, and they thought that I could be able to deliver a film for their exhibition. So I did this. These were the 15 elements of architecture, and I edited an half-an-hour-long film in which there were 15 different chapters related, one of them to each of the 15 elements of architecture. So there was, for example, a collection of corridors, a collection of facade according to animation film and other things like that. Floor, it means scenes shown from the top. Windows opening and closing, as I said before in the Verifica Incerta video, and so on. So I would like, of course, it's impossible to screen this video now because it's half an hour long, but I would like to show you the first 3 minutes of this film that was projected inside the introduction room in the main exhibition of that Biennale. And so I would like to, Mario to screen Elements, the second video, please.
Ellen, got anybody to take you home? Good.
Open up this door.
So this was the first chapter of the Elements movie. Then you had balconies and then floor and then all the other 15 elements of architecture. I would like to finish this short lecture about another project that I did. We spoke about remaking. We spoke about doing collages and combining footage in a found footage film. There's another possibility. We can remix materials if we speak about second-hand stuff to be used for something new. In remix, you can produce a new version, for example, of an existing song. Well, I tried to remix a very well-known scene from a very well-known movie that is, of course, The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Well, I think that this is probably one of the most famous horror movies ever directed, and probably it's one of the most famous movie delivered by Stanley Kubrick. I have to say that, of course, I'm not the first one that tries to say something new about this film in generally speaking, but also I'm not the only one that tried to say something new about this hallway, this corridor in this particular scene in which you have Danny going inside the corridors of the Overlook Hotel. So, for example, online you can find many different interesting videos delivered by video essayists, directors, and fans that work with the same material, such as Danny going inside the Overlook Hotel and try to say something new. For example, on the top left, you can see a beautiful video that is about symmetry in Stanley Kubrick's movie that was delivered by Kogonada, while on the top right, you can see a frame from this amazing movie that was called Room 237 that tried to explain with this drawing the architecture that was behind the structure of the building in the film. And recently, probably you have watched this. This is Ready Player One by Steven Spielberg. In the film, the main characters had the opportunity to use, I would say, virtual reality in order to visit the Overlook Hotel again, to go inside this space again and interact with the characters of the film. And this is amazing because it's one of my dreams. I would like to be able to walk inside the corridor of the Overlook Hotel and open the room number 237. Well, the last video that I would like to show is called The Corridor and work with this particular scene that is composed by all these frames, you know, in a 36 second long sequence. You have more or less 864 frames, 24 frames per second. So it means a huge amount of frames. Well, what I tried to do in this experiment was to put these frames inside the virtual space and trying to create a sort of domino. This is the domino shown from the top. And then when I did this domino, I tried to go inside this domino with a virtual camera, trying to reveal something new about the original corridor of the film. In the video that you are going to watch, in the short video, you will also listen at an amazing soundtrack delivered by Michele Osvaldo Pane, that is a musician that worked with me, and he did more or less the same with the original soundtrack. He took the original music and changed it, remixed it according to the movement of the camera. So I would like to screen the last video, the video number 3. So this was the corridor, an experiment that I did in order to understand the architecture of the interior space of the Overlook Hotel. But I would say that it's also an experiment trying to produce new architecture, virtual architecture, I would say, and say something new about a very well-known space. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Davide. It was, again, very hypnotic, all these images. Good. So thanks Miranda and Davide for this presentation and showing us all this new material for us. This secret treasure book that you show, Miranda, on the International, and all this, the background before this film. That is the first work I saw from Davide at the Biennale, and this developing it further. Great. I had a question for both of you to start your debate, or to give this little short dialogue that you can have between you about curiosity on each other's work. But I would like to ask you if you can explain us what is your fascination of dealing with material that it's handled, that you find that it's fabricated by others, more than starting from new. If you can explain. Yes, if you want to start, Miranda, you can switch on the micro and the microphone.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I've always been fascinated by objects because first because I had to deal with them. You know, I had to go somewhere, someplace, some market, some home, some lost it in a cabinet, and you know, you already take a lot of attention, because if you find it and you like it, you transmit. I mean, there's kind of connection between you and the object. So probably this happened a long time ago when I did some traveling on the 50s and 60s. I would say 60s more than 50s, 60s, yeah. And but at a certain point, I really find out. I don't know. It was like you know, listen to them. You know, coming down late on the day and checking. You know, their conversations there. I knew they had private lives and they had some affairs between them, probably. You know, and so that sort of a charge of those objects. I always love to collect objects. I'm not a collector, but a collect means to keep them, you know. But I'm not, you know, I'm not looking for and trying to get as many as no. I mean, but yes, I'm fascinated by them. You know, I think most of them, there are orphans. I mean, you know, they don't have a home, they don't have a family, they don't have an identification, they don't have a bio. They don't have a value on the market. So you know, sometimes I'm thinking about those things, you know, what is their adventure, what they've been moving on, and when if they were carried in deluxe luggage, you know, well wrapped in a silky, just throw out on a, you know, on a market, on a flea market. So it's fascinating and it's true. But also I like to work with them, you know. I don't know if they like that, but I like to sometimes to watch them and to turn to something else, for sure, to give what, you know, what David says, you know, that sort of second life, whatever, third life, that sort of, this is like this beautiful word, and came in one of David, I wrote down here, who was like the mockumentary. I mean, that's, you know, that making something that is not a model, is something else, but it transforms and it makes you feel and think about some other things, whatever. Yep.
Great. Well, I don't know. I would call myself a cinephile, I would say, like the French love to call the people that love cinema. And this started when I was very young, I would say 5 years old. And this passion became more and more important to me. And I would say it was still important while I started studying architecture. And then when I had the chance to be an architect for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So later, this passion became more important to me. And I remember when I had the chance to do this video, the first video, I remember hundreds of different scenes. So because every time I watch a film, I watch a movie, I always like to collect scenes and clips. It doesn't matter if I have a project in mind. It doesn't matter. It's something that I have to do. I don't know why, but it's collecting and cataloging things and put them inside a folder on my laptop. And I think that this gives the possibility to produce a new project in the future. I like to work with cinema, with movies, because when you start taking a scene from a movie and then you start cutting in very small pieces, in very small videos, you notice how the editor edited the original film. You notice something about the background. You notice something about a particular way the actors act, and so on. So it starts as a way to study cinema, and then it has become a way to do my own stuff. I don't know how it works, but I know for sure that I can't stop. Every day I have to watch at least one film. And for me, watching cinema is like going in a playground. And I think that also Miralda experienced the same, because when he was explaining, for example, the different objects found in the Teddy's restaurant. And when I read also the article on the magazine that described this idea of digging the surfaces of the different walls, I think that a restaurant can be a playground for an artist, a playground for an architect. It's a playground in which you can experiment, you can dig like the children can do in a real playground. And then you can reveal something new, combining objects that no one thought that could be related. I think that in Miralda's presentation, Miralda lecture, what was interesting was also the titles of the different objects. They were very funny, but also without looking at the images, the title was already saying something about the project. I mean, there was the one, the Lobster Dream, but also the one, the Temptation of St. Anthony, or there were many objects. The old Coke cans mosaic is something that you can, if you say this title, something happen in your mind. So it's important also to work with words, but I can see that in your background you are working with words. So it's important. Starting from, in my presentation, you had some definition coming from a dictionary, because it helps us in order to understand what we are speaking about. Sure. It's something that is very important. And I have to say, it's something that, came for me from another movie, because if you remember Pulp Fiction, directed by Quentin Tarantino, it starts with the definition of what pulp fiction is, what pulp is. So sometimes it's very important to start from words if you want to produce something new.
Great, thank you. So let's introduce the next two guests we have this afternoon. Thank you very much, both of you, and then we come back